The Forestry Division is the key agency that is involved in the management of the state's forests and wildlife resources. In the management of our forest resources, emphasis is placed on the management and rehabilitation of our watersheds. A lot of effort is placed on the management of soil conservation techniques, mitigating flooding, and to ensure that our watershed resources are properly recharged so that the country can have a clean supply of potable water. This video is designed to demonstrate proper soil and water conservation techniques. It is designed to ensure that our resources are managed in a sustainable manner.
My name is Balraj Raghu and I'm the Agricultural Assistant 3 at the Northwest Conservancy Forestry Division. This morning, my presentation will be managing on top to preserve the bottom. Forestry's role in preserving our water and the environment. In today's world, most governments are faced with the challenge of enhancing food security while balancing its environment. This problem has guided the government's goal to put environmental consideration at the heart of its developmental policy. The government of Trinidad and Tobago Vision 2030 pledges to conserve our land and sea, our wildlife, our marine spaces, and our green spaces and their diversity. As such, the Forestry Division is mandated to ensure that the forest biodiversity of Trinidad and Tobago are sustainably managed. As we are all aware, forest plays an important role in the quality of life that we humans enjoy. Forested catchments supply a high proportion of water for domestic, agricultural, industrial, and ecological needs in both upstream and downstream areas. They reduce soil loss, thereby keeping sediments out of the streams. They provide habitat for wildlife, provide recreational spaces, and of course, they act as carbon dioxide filters. But perhaps the most important contribution is in maintaining high water quality to the hydrological characteristics of its surrounding ecosystems. These benefits can be greatly diminished due to poor agronomic practices on the hillsides, which leads to erosion and a myriad of other problems on lower land areas. The Northern Range is a major area of concern for the Forestry Division because of its location and the fact that it is in full view of the entire population. It is an important watershed area that provides water for two of the country's major dams, as well as it supports various lives and livelihoods. Over the years, socioeconomic conditions have led to uncontrolled quarrying, squatting, and numerous other challenges that hinder the division's conservation efforts. One of the more critical tools that the division uses in managing our forests is agroforestry. This is simply a land use system that uses both forest species as well as agricultural crops on the same holding. 3 stations were commissioned to act as demonstration units to help assist farmers who farm on hillsides in their soil and water conservation attempts. These 3 stations were strategically located at the foothills of Maracas St. Joseph, Coral Royal Road, and the St. Michael Road, Tacarigua. These stations also serve as gateway barriers to prevent upslope squatting, provide planting material for mass production by other arms of the ministry, host field tours where simple, practical soil and water management conservation techniques are taught. When one considers that over 80% of the Northern Range is privately owned, one can appreciate how critical it is to properly manage and regenerate the forests that are under the control of the state. In addition to the agroforestry demonstration stations, the division has undertaken in its 2022-2023 program of work to reforest 10 hectares of denuded forests, tend and supply 10 hectares of land that was reforested the previous year, conduct over 100 patrols along the Northern Range. We will strictly monitor private removal of logs, produced over 150,000 seedlings of various species at the St. Joseph Nursery to be used in its enrichment planting scheme. In order for the division to have a meaningful impact, it is imperative that communities in and around the range buy into the concept of conservation and its importance to water quantity and quality. Linkages have already been made with community groups at the St. Michael area, where the station trails are used for exercise and recreation purposes, and the community in return acts as an extra pair of eyes to prevent any unwanted activity. In the Cora area, talks are ongoing with the hunters in the community in an effort to preserve roadways. The Conservancy is also presently developing a plan to better use social media to showcase important initiatives, sites, and plans all aimed at highlighting the diversity and beauty of the Northern Range. We also continue to reinforce our cooperation with state agencies and NGOs and lend our expertise to their efforts as well. It is worthwhile to reiterate that the challenge faced by land, forest, and water managers is to find ways to maximize the benefits of our forests without detriment to our water resources and ecosystem function. This presentation aims to highlight the division's efforts in soil and water management techniques used in managing our forests on the Northern Range. We're here at the St. Michael Hillside Station, nestles at the foothills of the Northern Range. It is here that most of our teaching efforts on soil conservation takes place. Here we host students from the University of the West Indies, NGOs, primary schools, secondary schools. And it is here that we show basic soil and conservation and water conservation techniques used by hillside farmers. So when we are talking about soil and water conservation, basically we are talking about the concept of erosion. And when we are dealing with erosion, we are primarily concerned about two types: water erosion and erosion caused by the effects of fire. Erosion measures can be classified into two categories: mechanical as well as agronomic practices. Here we're going to outline some of the more applicable mechanical practices used by farmers on a hillside. So basically, there are three types of terraces used here at St. Michael. There are the bench type terrace, there are mini terraces, and there are eyebrow terrace. We are presently standing right now on what is called the bench type terrace. As you can see, where we are standing on is more than 2 meters in length, and it is constructed in such a way that it slopes into the hill, thereby catching the water and allowing the water to flow along its contours, preventing the least amount of soil removal. This particular conservation technique would not be adopted readily by farmers, as it is very expensive to construct. So basically, this is the second type of terraces that we use here at St. Michael. As you can see, the actual bench is a lot narrower. Anything that is less than a meter or so, we characterize that as being a mini terrace. If you notice again, in its construction, the bench portion is sloped towards the hillside, catching the flow of water coming down and dispersing it along the contours. Later on in the presentation, we will actually demonstrate how we go about constructing this particular method. Finally, we have what is called the eyebrow terrace here. It is the most adopted measure by farmers on the hillside, as it is cheap to construct and it is very effective. As you can see, the eyebrow shape into the hill is what gives it its characteristic name, eyebrow terrace. Water basically comes down the slope, pools at this point here, settles, infiltrates slowly, and then comes down further down the hill. Plants are planted at this lip here, and eventually on establishment, the root system helps stabilizes the soil. This particular tool that we have here is called the Aframe. It is probably the most important tool for any farmer who is farming on the hillside. Basically, it's just 3 pieces of wood our construction, it has it at 1 meter apart, joined by a piece in the middle, and any weight suspended from the middle with a center mark right at the middle of the frame. This particular demonstration that we're about to conduct is actually what a farmer has to go through in order to implement some sort of conservation method on his farm. It is very labor intensive, hence most farmers tend to use other sorts of conservation methods, basically intercropping, small check dams, or any low cost method. Generally, a farmer has a slope of land. He can start at the bottom of the slope at any particular point. Once he gets that point, he uses this tool now to try to establish a series of points along the hillsides that are generally of the same elevation. That is what we consider a contour line. The A-frame is placed at the base of the stake and maneuvered up or down the slope in order to have this plumb bulb directly centered on the line. Once this line is set, that is the position of the other stake. This process is continued till the entire area is staked. The next step is to actually construct the terrace itself, the bench portion of the terrace. So the next step is the farmer comes, starts grubbing into the slope and creating the terrace, the bench portion of the terrace. If you notice, while he's grubbing, he's creating a channel as well. That channel is what we call the contour drain. So he cuts, creating the contour channel, and levels the bench portion of the terrace at the same time. So the next step after the construction of the lower terrace is to actually establish the one that is higher. The farmer comes, places the A-frame next to any particular stake, and maneuvers it in such a way so as this plumb bulb lines vertically with this portion of the A-frame. He then spies along, signaling his partner on top there to the base of the other stake, right there. And the next level of contour proceeds. Our agronomic conservation techniques here at St. Michael basically focuses with two particular techniques. One is intercropping and the other is what we call grass barriers here. If you notice, this type of grass is what we call vetiver grass. It's a deep fibrous rooted grass that when planted along the contours of a slope helps in stabilizing the soil. Water comes down, and if you notice it's planted in steps. The water checks at this grass barrier here, slows down, and then comes down at a gentler pace till it reaches the end of the slope. Plants can be planted in between the grass barriers, thereby increasing the yield on any farm. Another conservation method used to channel water from up the slope down towards the slope is the check dam. Now a check dam could be either made of stone, wood, or any sort of available material that the farmer has on hand. This particular one here uses stone that was gathered from the St. Michael station and just packed in a semicircular fashion. What happens is you identify a natural waterway along the slope, and that particular waterway is then outfitted with check dams all along to decrease the velocity of flow coming down the slope. A slight gully is then constructed behind the check dams so that the water slows, comes down, pools at this point. It's allowed to infiltrate and slowly cascades over again. Gliricidia is a popular plant used in soil conservation, as it not only serves the purpose of stopping water velocity down the slope, but it also enriches the soil by adding nitrogen. This is a perfect example of how check dams are used in soil conservation. As you can see here, this perfect example shows the water flow from on top coming down to the bottom. The water comes down, pools in the little recess that was created, settles and gently flows over and continues on its way. Pools again, settles, goes over. This process reduces the amount of soil that is taken away with the water flow. No amount of soil conservation practices is going to really totally eradicate erosion. Here we have what is called a silt trap, which is located at the base of a natural waterway. During heavy downpours, a fair amount of sediments comes down, collects here before the water moves on its natural way. Not many farmers will be blessed with a natural spring on their holdings. If they are, they can probably construct something that looks like this. Basically, this is a catchment pond that we at St. Michael collects our natural spring water, channel it further down slope into an area where we do aquaculture, and then channel further down to our building where the water is used for other minor purposes. We have spoken extensively about erosion, mainly erosion caused by rain or water. But another contributing and a major contributing factor at that of erosion is forest fires. In that fire program, workers are dispatched throughout the northern range in an effort to suppress forest fires. Catchment areas such as these can assist workers in this suppression effort. It is only through the proper management and conservation techniques of our hills and slopes can we ensure that natural resources like these are maintained for generations to come.